Are you truly connecting with your audience or your team? Are people walking away feeling excited or positively impacted? Well, in today's video, we'll be going over why it's so important to build that connection and create a feeling within people when they walk away, they remember that good positive feeling that they had with you. And chapters 9, 10, 11, and 12 of the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication by John Maxwell will provide us tools and tips on how to build that connection with others and what we need to do to be able to create that connection. So let's get into it. From each chapter, I selected one quote that stood out to me the most. Let's start with chapter 9. Here we go. If I wanted people to be excited, I had to be excited. I had to have a posture of continual improvement where every day I had a passion to learn more, possessed the work ethic to become more, and was excited to share more with others. Chapter 9 is the law of anticipation. To change your sense of anticipation toward an experience, a speech, any sort of simple conversation, then it requires a perspective shift. We can only become what we can see ourselves becoming. First, you've got to take a look at your personal perspective. Believe that you can communicate, because the first and most important audience is yourself. What words do you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself? For example, if it's, well, I don't think I can communicate, well, there's an issue there, right? Because that's just not true. If you choose to believe it for yourself, then it's true for yourself. But you can choose the other routes. You can say, I am a phenomenal communicator, right? It's all on how you come across it and adding that tonality, that excitement to your voice as well, which will then get you excited about communicating, learning how to communicate properly, all those things, getting your ideas out there in front of others to be able to hear and grasp and understand and feel. Have you ever thought about where doubt comes from? It comes from the thinking of, oh, I don't think I can do that. So anytime you're afraid of something where fear steps in and you have that feeling of fear where you just want to just stay put where you are and not take action moving forward toward that thing that you're saying, oh, I can't do that. It's going to take courage, the ability to step into that action, to step into that fear and face it and keep going and pushing forward. And then at the end of it, you realize, oh, okay, I survived that. That was cool. That was great. Or that wasn't great. I'm not going to experience that ever again. So it takes the courage to step into and feel that fear and do it anyway. To overcome those fears and doubts where you're using the words, oh, I don't think, or I don't feel, you must trust and believe that you're going to get stronger, you're going to get better, you're going to improve by just taking the action steps that you need to take to face that fear. So it's not going to then haunt you and hold you back from experiences, opportunities, on and on and on. So again, going back to the words that you use to speak to yourself about yourself. Any person who goes on stage, whether a comedian, actor, speaker, musician, it doesn't matter. They say positive affirmations to themselves about themselves. For example, John Maxwell points out in this chapter, before he gets on stage to talk to people, he repeats this saying over and over and over again. I am a person of value who values people and adds value to them. So he repeats this over and over. Some people would call that a mantra. For John Maxwell, he describes it as a self-worth statement. And why are we talking about facing our doubts and our fears? It's because confidence is key when it comes to anticipation, building anticipation, creating anticipation. Through your courageous actions, you're going to build confidence without a doubt. Through those stacked wins, you're going to build and build and build more confidence. And with more confidence, you'll have less and less and less fear. The next area of focus is your speech perspective. Believe that you have something to give. This ties into a previous video I covered about conviction. Take inventory of the things you feel very strongly about, of the things that you would fight for, the things that you speak passionately about. Those are the things, when you get in front of people, let that be shown so they can feel exactly what you're feeling. That right there shows people your confidence because you're speaking confidently, strongly about those topics. And that's what builds anticipation. Your level of excitement will match their level of excitement. And you'll also want to take a look at your audience perspective. Believe people can and want to improve their lives. It's one thing to communicate to people because you feel you have something incredibly valued to give and offer. compared to communicating with people because they have value. We need to deeply care about the audience itself, because with no audience, there's no valuable content, no valuable message to deliver. We get the most out of people when we believe in them, and research backs this up. We treat them better than people we think are going to fail. We give them more opportunities to succeed than people we feel are going to fail. We give them more accurate, helpful feedback than people who we don't value. And we do more higher quality teaching for those who we value compared to those we don't. And so once you've cultivated the right mindset around anticipation, you can start thinking about how to create the atmosphere for anticipation. If you're excited about something, start doing that thing that gets you excited. And so going back to stacking those small wins, it's just going to build and build and build that anticipation, that excitement within you, and then which you'll be able to transfer that over into the audience, into the people that you're talking to. Don't wait for an opportunity and then get ready. Get ready and do the thing now, and then opportunities will come. And John Maxwell talks about being a fountain, not a drain. As you prepare to speak to an audience, a team, a person, you need to think of yourself as a fountain. You need to be someone who gives to others, because fountains overflow, right? Thinking in terms of relationships, you're either a plus or a minus. If you're a minus, people are avoiding you. If you're a plus, people are wanting to be around you all the time. So you want to be a fountain. You want to give and give and give that water to people. You don't want to be a drain and take away anything from them. This requires monitoring your attitude. Typically, when you have a poor attitude, then you're draining others around you. So intentionally make sure that your attitude is always good and always adding value and positivity to everyone around you. Let's get into the next chapter, chapter 10. Here's the quote that stood out to me the most. There's an art to saying a lot in a few words. You must choose your words wisely and pick only the ones that make an impact. Chapter 10 is the law of simplicity. The goal when you're speaking to anyone, a team, an audience, a person, is to just keep it simple, keep it natural, keep it flowing. Oftentimes we want to dazzle people with just way too much. But really what it comes down to is simplicity, so that they can walk away from a conversation and experience truly understanding and feeling something special from that situation because they understood that experience, that conversation, so that they can then reflect back on that positive feeling of, oh, I remember that moment. When there's too much going on, it makes it very difficult then to recall and remember every single detail. Typically, we don't. We only remember the key things that made us feel a certain way, or the key things that we intentionally wanted to remember and zoom in on and focus on and recall in the future. But we don't remember other aspects if there's just way too much going on. So that's why keeping everything simple is always the best route to go. Shift your perspective and be the audience, be that other person, be that team who's sitting there listening to you. Ultimately, all they want out of that whole experience is to be able to understand you. So that's why we need to keep things simple so that it's easy to understand what we're trying to communicate, so they can walk away feeling they gained something out of that. John Maxwell intentionally applies simplicity to every area of his life, focusing his attention on only 5 key areas. 1, values. The reason for this is because decision-making is incredibly easy when you know your values. 2, principles. These are the beliefs and guidelines for how he conducts his life. 3, priorities. Knowing and doing the things that are most important every single day makes each day highly effective. 4, systems. Plan, organize, and work in a very systematic way to accomplish all your goals. And 5, intentionality. Stay focused to bring effectiveness to every area of your life. If you think about it, most issues are highly complex. So if you can take an issue and deconstruct it and simplify it and then put it out there in the world, people will love you for that. Because they don't want to take the time to try to grasp and understand something that's highly complex. They want to have a Cliff's Notes version of it so that they can grasp and understand that highly complex issue, apply that understanding to their life, and or communicate that simplified understanding then to somebody else who can then communicate that to somebody else and or apply those things to their own life. The beautiful thing about taking something highly complex, deconstructing it into something incredibly simple, is that then you and or the people you're talking to can have epiphany moments, those moments where they're like, oh, wow, I totally understand now. Wow, I never knew that. And it's often said, if you can't explain something simply, then you just don't fully understand it yet. And what that is saying too is it takes a whole lot of hard work to distill something into a simple concept that you can understand, that then you can communicate to others so they can simply understand. It takes a lot of hard work, but it's worth it. Nothing is as simple as we hope, right? But with perseverance and consistent action, that complex thing can become simple. Great communicators have clarity. They can speak on a subject that a fifth grader can understand. They understand what they're speaking about so crystal clear that a child understands what they're trying to communicate. Great communicators also have brevity. You don't need to talk a lot to get your point across. It's not the number of words that you use, it's the impact that you make with the words that you choose to use. And of course, brevity takes work. Think of any author out there, they write out everything and then they have to do a lot of edits and cuts, and that's what creates the brevity. But of course, if you have a speech that you're giving to an audience or a team, then that means you need to do all that pre-work leading up to that moment in time, right? So writing out that script and editing it down and down and down and down until finally, like, oh, this is it right here. I'm saying only the key words that I need to say. So if you're getting ready to make a speech to an audience or a team, then you need to do that pre-work, editing the script down, rehearsing the script over and over and over, editing again, rehearsing some more, maybe editing again if you absolutely need to until you finally reach that moment like, okay, this is it right here, and then you go deliver. And of course, great communicators have incredible focus. A very focused piece of communication only contains the very things that it absolutely needs and nothing else. Let's get into chapter 11. Here's the quote that stood out to me the most. If you want to become a better communicator, you must do more than speak from the neck up. Don't remain stationary and attempt to command attention. Use body movement, gestures, and facial expressions and capture attention. Chapter 11 is the law of visual expression. As a communicator, you need to decide what you're going to do visually to enhance your presentation. The reason for this is because majority of people are visual learners and think in images. So of course, visuals can be pictures, props, and videos. Those are all very good things to add to any presentation that you make to an audience or a team. But also pay attention to your body movements, your gestures, and your facial expressions. These are visual expressions as well. Comedians, of course, are very, very good of expressing these three very things right here. Body movement, gestures, and facial expressions. So to improve in these areas, yes, gain some more experience and start getting comfortable on stages or in front of people to where you can then be more expressive in these areas. But to study some of the great comedians, for example, they're very, very good of expressing these three very things, and pay attention to how those three things, gestures, facial expressions, body movement, really enhances what is being said, the words that are being said. Sometimes you can just communicate absolutely nothing other than a facial expression or a gesture or a body movement, and that communicates something right there to the audience or the team that you're talking to. So although that content is important, you also must keep in mind that audiences also want to be engaged and entertained. That's where the visual expression comes into place. Now let's get into chapter 12. Here's the quote that stood out to me the most. You can use stories for any purpose: to prove a point, illustrate an idea, teach a process, break the tension, or move your audience emotionally. Chapter 12 is the law of storytelling. So going back to how audiences want to be engaged and entertained, but also be able to take away some value from the conversation, the experience. Stories have the great ability to add context to an idea, a message, and also entertain, engage. So why are storytellers so effective? One, they're enthusiastic. They typically express themselves with joy and excitement and vitality when they are communicating their story. They love what they're talking about. Two, they're animated. They add voices, gestures, facial expressions, body movement to the story that they're communicating. Three, they get audience participation. Oftentimes, storytellers get the audience to engage by singing, clapping, mimicking a certain phrase, whatever it is. And 4, they're responsive. They're not necessarily trying to drive home a point with their story. If somebody engages at some point in the story, they listen to the audience, they listen to the person, and then continue the story. So they're not rigid in their approach. They're flexible throughout the storytelling process. 5, they were personable. Storytellers are recalling this story, and so they do it without notes. They speak very simply and naturally, and this allows them to maintain constant eye contact. When you're considering adding stories to your presentations, don't do it to impress or anything like that. Do it to add value and context to the overall message that you're trying to communicate. But also use it as a way to connect with the audience, to connect with the person you're talking to the team that you're talking to, and maybe even possibly deliver something emotional to make that emotional connection. We all have a story to tell, and stories allow that emotional connection with people. It gives you the ability to open up, be authentic, to express your problems, your failures, your successes, your hopes, your dreams. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you're telling a story, make sure to put yourself in their shoes, in order to give them the chance to live out the story with you, so that they can truly see themselves living out that story. Here's a few things to think about to make your story highly effective. What do I want them to see and hear? What is the essence of the story that you're wanting to tell? Is there any fluff or anything that does not need to be in there? Make sure to remove anything that has no relevance to the story. And make sure your story is specifically tailored for the audience, the team that you're talking to, so that they see themselves in your story. How will telling this story help them? Make sure that the audience can take something away from that story. Yes, of course, you can tell a story simply just to engage or entertain, but why not add some piece of value to it as well? What do I want them to imagine? As the story is being told, naturally, people are going to start thinking in images and recalling past experiences as they live through that story that's being told. So be very intentional with what you want your audience to imagine and picture and think about. What do I want them to feel? Don't be afraid to show people that you deeply care about what you're communicating. Storytelling is built on humanity, so it connects with others when it contains emotion. Allow your stories to develop deep feelings in your audience, in your team, and the person you're talking to. These deep feelings are what they're going to take away with them after the conversation, after the presentation. So I hope this has been helpful. It's been a lot of fun. I'll be covering other future chapters of the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication by John Maxwell in another video, so look out for that. And I've also covered other previous chapters of this book in previous videos, so if you haven't checked those out, check those out, and I'll see you in the next video.